to a little bit of a late start. We had a very robust breakfast meeting over at one of the local district offices for Health and Human Services, talking about everything from the opioid contract crisis to contracts, a little bit of everything. And so we just want to first thank all the folks at the Department of Health and Human Services for hosting us over there this morning. Two quick notes, and then I'll turn it over to Councillor Kenny. First, if you have your cell phones on, that's fine, but just please make sure that they're in silent mode so we can actually hear folks as they're speaking and answer questions for the Executive Council. We are also, just as a reminder, open to the public. Folks have the ability to dial in, both the press and the public, I believe, can dial in, so the phones are on speaker today, but not two-way. It's kind of a one-way engagement, so they can hear the proceedings here. With that, Councillor Kennedy, I'll kick it over to you for a reading.
Thank you, Governor. So I just have a poem by William Shakespeare, and I'll give a short prayer. The poem is named Blow, Blow, Thou Winter Wind. I'll do my best Shakespearean accent here. Blow, blow, thou winter wind, thou art not so unkind as man's ingratitude. Thy tooth is not so keen because thou art not seen. Although thy breath be rude, hee-ho, sing, hee-ho, unto the green holly. Most friendship is feigning, most loving mere folly. Then hee-ho, the holly. This is life is most jolly. Freeze, freeze, thou bitter sky, that dost not bite so nigh, as benefits forgot. Though thou the waters warp, thy sting is not so sharp, as friend remember not. He-ho, sing he-ho, unto the green holly. So with that, let us pray. Dear Lord, bless this Executive Council meeting. Bless the councils and the governor that they make strong and right decisions for the people of New Hampshire. Bless our men and women in uniform, our first responders, our men and women who serve the globe, our National Guard, and for our state employee workers around the state of New Hampshire. Give us strength and wisdom as we move forward in this meeting. We thank you, Lord. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get started, we have one commendation today. One thing we've been trying to do is just highlight a lot of our unsung heroes within state government. We have a lot of departments that have been doing some pretty incredible things, both pre, during, and hopefully will continue doing them post-pandemic as we get to post, hopefully sooner than later. And so one of those groups is a group that, frankly, I think a lot of folks don't even realize exists, but they do a lot. And there was a couple examples over the past couple of years where they were really going above and beyond, not just to bring in more fines or fees for the state, but really going above and beyond for our citizens, for our constituents. And that is our Bureau of Securities Regulation. Very exciting group. I'm not even going to go into what a security is and all that sort of thing. But our new secretary, they work with, in conjunction, and for, if you will, the Secretary of State. So I think, is our new Secretary of State here somewhere? David, come on out. And is the team from Bureau?
They're here, yeah.
Bureau, here? Come on out. The Speaker of the House gets to do it. Hey, how are you guys? Great. I'm going to turn it over to you a little bit. You can introduce everyone, but there was a couple cases, but one in particular where, I mean, I'll kind of do the short version, and they can go into the details as they want to. Effectively, New Hampshire just did it better than everybody else, and went the extra mile and got millions and millions of dollars in restitution, really for some clients here within the state of New Hampshire. And really set a model, and I think it's known for the rest of the country in terms of what you guys were able to do. It was really awesome, and it's one of those things where a lot of the there was some financial reporting on it, in the kind of the financial magazines and all that. It didn't necessarily make the headlines of CNN, but it really was going above and beyond to making sure that our citizens were taken care of and that there was some justice served, so to say. But again, it's just, I know you have a great team over there. We try to be very free and open with our businesses, and I know you deal with a lot of things, everything from initial business filings all the way to really, really complex issues. But we just want to thank you guys for all that you do. But with that, I'll turn it over to you, Dave.
Well, thank you, Governor. I really can't say more than you already have. I mean, this is a great team of really dedicated state employees, state servants, and their goal is to protect just the average person in the state of New Hampshire. And they're unsung heroes. They do a great job and don't really get a lot of recognition for it.
So we do have an official commendation recognizing the Bureau of Securities Regulation, whereas the New Hampshire Department of State's Bureau of Securities Regulation mission is to provide equitable regulation for investors in the Granite State while also facilitating responsible capital formation. And whereas for nearly 100 years, the State Securities Division has been defending and informing Main Street investors to ensure that they're treated fairly and don't fall victim to investment scams. And whereas the Securities Division also looks out for investment-related violations such as churning, which is a very illegal practice where a broker engages in excessive trading in a client's account to generate commissions. And whereas the Securities Division investigated and determined a top broker within a high-profile firm, I like that we're not naming the high-profile firm, but I think it's out there, using these unethical trading practices, and as a result, ordered the company to pay more than $26 million in restitution to its clients and approximately $2 million in fines back to the state of New Hampshire. And whereas the Securities Division helps ensure that New Hampshire businesses and individuals can safely invest and are treated fairly by investment companies and their salespeople. Now, therefore, I, Christopher T. Sununu, Governor of the state of New Hampshire, do hereby commend the Bureau of Securities Regulation for their hard work and dedication to the state of New Hampshire. Thank you guys very much. Great. Morning. How are you? Is the council up with us? Yeah, you guys know it. But it has not changed. Thank you very much. Okay, moving forward, I'll call this meeting of the Governor and Executive Council to order. I want to begin by asking for a motion to adopt the meeting minutes from our January 12th, 2022 meeting. So moved. Any discussion or questions or things to amend within those meeting minutes? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of accepting the meeting minutes, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? With that, the meeting minutes are approved. Next, from the Office of the Secretary of State, we have our civil commissions. Could I please get a motion to adopt the list of civil commissions? Second. All in favor of adopting the list of civil commissions as presented, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The list of civil commissions is approved. Any new names or adjustments to be made to the list of civil commissions? Okay, with that, then the issue of civil commissions is concluded. We have two resignations to accept today. From the Family Mediator Certification Board, could I please have a motion to accept the resignation of Marianne Russo of Ware?
So moved.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? And with that, Marianne's resignation is accepted. From the Pease Development Authority, could I please have a motion to accept the resignation of Kevin Smith from Londonderry?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? And Kevin's resignation is also accepted. So we have a list of confirmations to move on today. To begin, could I please have a motion to confirm Georgia Murray of Conway to the Air Resources Council?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? With that, Georgia is confirmed. Could I please have a motion to confirm Rita Costengay-Hunt of Chichester to the Aviation Users Advisory Board?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Rita is confirmed. Could I please, we're going to move on to David Goldberg. Could I please have a motion to confirm David Goldberg of Manchester to the Board of Medicine?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? David is confirmed. Could I please have a motion to confirm Alan Clark of Sugar Hill to the Fire Standards and Training Commission?
So moved.
Any discussion?
Just like to say, Governor Allen's been very involved in the North Country Fire Academy. He's been a leader amongst leaders up with the North Country firefighters, and he's been long on public serving. And we're glad to see that he's signed up to another term here in the Fire Standards and Training Commission.
Okay. Alan's pretty much involved with everything in the North Country. I mean, I don't know how he finds the hours in the day. Further discussion? Okay, with that, all in favor of Alan Clark, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chief Clark is confirmed. Could I now please have a motion to confirm Robert Buxton of Hudson to the Fire Standards and Training Commission?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chief Buxton is confirmed. Could I please have a motion to confirm Ronald Sebastian of Derry to the Fire Standards and Training Commission?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ron is confirmed. Now could I please have a motion to confirm Scott Hunter of New Boston to the State Board of Fire Control?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hunter is confirmed. And finally, could I have a motion to confirm Richard Thorner of Manchester to the State Historical Resources Council?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
I just wanted to go on the record, I had a fascinating conversation with Richard. He's a collector of antiquities. He actually can authorize old signatures and see if they're real or not, which is quite interesting. He's been very involved in the historical society around this area of Manchester, but also as an attorney, a litigator. So I found that an interesting combination, but really fascinating conversation. Good man.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And Mr. Thorner is confirmed. That concludes our confirmation. Today, I do have some nominations to read into the record. As the Assistant Commissioner for the Department of Transportation, I nominate William Cass of Laconia. As the Deputy Commissioner for the Banking Department, I nominate Raylene Blaisdell of Dover. As the Director of the Division of Motor Vehicles for the Department of Safety, I nominate John Marasco of Hooksett. To the New Hampshire Vaccine Association, I nominate Mark Fournier of Exeter. To the New Hampshire Veterans Home Board of Managers, I nominate Madeline Busicki of Pella. To the Pease Development Authority, I nominate Stephen Dufrey of Concord. To the Public Employee Labor Relations Board, I nominate Brian Paquette of New Boston. To the Speech Language Pathology and Hearing Care Provider Governing Board, I nominate William Flanders of Hampton and Meredith Bergeron of Canaan. To the New Hampshire State Council of the Arts, I nominate Vivian Beer of Manchester. To the State Historical Resources Council, I nominate Richard Gobert of Deerfield. That concludes the nominations for today. Moving on, we have our consent calendar agenda. Could I begin by asking for a motion to adopt the consent calendar?
Second.
Any discussion or request to take specific items out for discussion from the consent calendar? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of adopting the consent calendar as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? consent calendar to adopt. Moving on to our regular agenda, we have items to begin from Health and Human Services. So could I ask for a motion to adopt agenda items 6 through 13A from the Department of Health and Human Services from the Office of the Commissioner, and please note that item 9 has been withdrawn by the agency.
Second.
Any discussion? Yes.
Good morning, Commissioner. Good morning. Just wanted to, wondering if you could follow up on item 8, when we might expect that transaction to conclude, and what we might be doing in the meantime to ensure we get adequate coverage.
So this is the contract where the state purchased Hampstead. A subsequent contract will come forward for a third-party vendor to help us operationalize or run that hospital. You will also see on the agenda today there are items for a strike team for Hampstead Hospital. That contractor has people ready to go that can be in place as quickly as tomorrow if it passes today to increase beds at Hampstead Hospital to service more children.
And on item 13A, since you just handed these out at the breakfast meeting, you want to elaborate on the availability of at-home testing for all New Hampshire residents?
Sure. So at-home testing is becoming a staple in our COVID response. And there's many ways to get tested in for COVID right now. We have our state sites that are free of charge. They're through your provider, your pharmacies. This is just one more option for residents of New Hampshire. Oftentimes people are hunting for tests at CVS or Walgreens just to have in their medicine cabinet in case. We are going to buy 1 million tests with this funding to put in the liquor stores, so that you may pick one off when you go to get a bottle of wine, to have it in your medicine cabinet. We are passing on the test at cost with a small admin fee for the cost to store it in the warehouse and barcode and things like that. So the pricing will be competitive market-wise.
And this will be, the cost will be reimbursable by insurance companies?
So insurance companies are reimbursing their beneficiaries for the at-home test costs now, so you submit a reimbursement form to your insurance companies.
Councilor Steve.
In regards to contract 8, Hampstead constituents have noted the survey work that is going on, and they just want confirmation that there's not going to be any sort of expansion to the building.
No, we are not expanding that building. If there's surveys work going on right now, it's in line with the acquisition of the property.
Understood. Thank you very much.
Councilor Gadsden.
Thank you, Governor. I want to applaud you and the department for the work they've been doing on the case with Frank and making sure that we get Massachusetts involved with the discussions and what's happened to that child and why the ball was dropped. So I applaud you both for pressing on and pressing back. The kids appreciate it also.
Okay. And still more to do, without a doubt. Still more to come. Further discussion on any of these items? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of items 6 through 13A, noting that item 9 has been removed, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Those items are approved. I'll now ask for a motion to adopt agenda item 14 from the Department of Health and Human Services from the Division of Finance and Procurement.
So moved. Second?
Any discussion on item 14? Okay, hearing none, all in favor signify. I'm sorry, did you? Oh, sorry. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And item 14 is approved. I'll now ask for a motion to adopt agenda items 15 through 19A from the Department of Health and Human Services from the Division of Public Health Services.
So moved.
Any discussion? Councilwoman, question?
With respect to item 15, the description in here talks about the addition of 2 new positions, but it's an $8.9 million contract, and most of it is under contracted services, and it doesn't really explain how the money is going to be used. I'm just wondering if you could give us more explanation there.
I'm going to ask Tricia Tilley, Director of Public Health, to help me with that information.
Good morning, Governor. Good morning, councilors. Again, Trish Tilley, the Director of Public Health Services. Thank you for your question, Councilor. So this is a significant investment by the federal government in supporting the public health workforce, not necessarily within the Division of Public Health Services, within the Department of Health and Human Services, but to support the workforce throughout the community. So part of these funds, about a quarter of them, are going to be used to support schools and school health. In particular, we're interested around behavioral health. We know the impacts of the pandemic have been striking in terms of student behavioral health, so we want to be able to support our school districts. We're also supporting our municipal city health departments in Manchester and Nashua. We'll be giving additional funds to both the health departments for things like epidemiology and other supports in their community that they've identified that they've needed throughout the pandemic. We will also be supporting our regional public health networks, and we will be putting community health workers within our community mental health centers. So that's an assortment of the sort of resources that we're going to be putting in the community. We also have some additional funding here for our temporary services contract, which this council has talked about several times. In particular, we know that we have some short-term needs in our laboratory, and our temporary service contractor has been really helpful, especially as we continue to see the number of tests so high. This will be able to surge our laboratory staff. And in addition, we'll also be paying for training and support for both our DHS workforce as well as workforce throughout the state.
Thank you. I don't know if others want to talk about that item, but I have other questions.
Any further questions on that item? Okay. Councilwoman, if you do a second.
On item 19, I need one response to this RFP for a $2.5 million contract. It is a 5-year contract with a 3-year renewal. Just wondering if you have any thoughts on why there was only one respondent to the RFP.
Thank you for that question. So this is for our APRIS. This is the support for our prescription drug monitoring program. As many of you know, that moved over from the OPLC into the Division of Public Health this year. This vendor is actually probably the leading expert in the state and vends with many, if not all, the other states. We put it out to bid. It was not surprising to us that there was only one applicant, but we went put it through a competitive procurement process.
Okay, fine, thank you. And just one further point, since we have you here, I want to applaud the congressional delegation for getting $500,000 in funding for Planned Parenthood to come to the state, and however, that does leave us still with quite a gap in family planning funding, right?
Yes, there's still a gap of supports in the community. We are pleased that Planned Parenthood was able to get some additional resources directly from the federal government. The other 2 agencies that were rejected by the council have not received additional federal funding.
Further questions? Councilor Stevens.
In regards to contract number 19 with APRIS, so they're providing software PMP Aware and NARCS Care, which is for monitoring and data sharing. Is a decision-making tool. Is that solely within the state?
I believe I understand your question, Councilor. Thank you. So this is really to support our existing PDMP, the whole data system that supports our pharmacies and our healthcare providers in the state. It adds some additional functionality. In particular, there was a bill last session that required us to work with our healthcare providers to improve the access between electronic health records and the PDMP. So that's really the bulk of these funds, is to improve that data sharing directly from an EHR into the PDMP.
Follow-up, but it's, if I'm reading it correctly, it's only within state.
Correct.
There is a system, PMP Interconnect, through the National Association of Pharmacies. We are a member. I'm just wondering, and what I'm finding from providers, it's fragmented. If they're in with a patient, they're looking at electronic health records, they're going into this system, that system. We know it's important to communicate with our bordering states. Are we getting that message out there that PMP Interconnect is an option?
Yes, I mean, you're raising a really important point right now. We've always had some, especially with our legislation, you know, New Hampshire prides itself on its privacy laws. So we want to work closely with the other border states, but we're continuing to negotiate some of the details of that.
This software will provide clinical alerts when patients or providers meet clinical thresholds. What's the follow-up action?
That follow-up action is really for the provider themselves to make those decisions. The state is not involved in that. What this simply does is provide essentially a better screen so that the provider can see when there's a concern. It just enhances the functionality.
On contract number 16, I had a chance to ask a question about our network of harm reduction sites for syringe exchanges. And with this vendor, my question is, how expansive are they, the New Hampshire Harm Reduction Coalition? Where are they dispersed throughout the state?
I'm going to ask Associate Commissioner Ann Landry. She works closely with them and can probably provide more detail.
Good morning, Ann Landry, Associate Commissioner. Thank you so much for your question, Councilor Stevens. The New Hampshire Harm Reduction Coalition entered into a new contract with us in August of 2020, towards the end of the month, to stand up harm reduction services throughout the state, and particularly in Manchester, Nashua, Rochester area, Concord, and then expanding to Claremont. So they've been progressing in the existing areas of Rochester, Manchester, and Nashua, and then expanding to Concord and Claremont as well. And we're happy to follow up with more detail afterwards, but those are the areas within our contract with them.
And the supports from this particular grant are really providing training and education. There's no syringes being purchased with it, none of that work. It's really about training and education.
Thank you.
Sorry, one more, Ann. Sorry. Maybe a couple more. Councilor Gadsden.
Thank you, Governor. I received your email in regards to the refuge. Thank you for that. I also got a call from a pastor up in Meredith who had a question about possibly locating a family in Meredith. I will get you that information. I don't have it here. Now, the other interesting thing I heard from an Afghan family.
I'm sorry, from?
Another interesting thing I heard from an Afghan family that I ran into was that they have to pay for their airline tickets that got them here. Now,
to my knowledge, I believe that's covered by the federal government.
no, it's not. They've got to pay it back.
So I can look into
If
that.
we can find that, well, because the refugees that came from other countries also had that same stipulation, that they had to pay for their airline tickets that got them. The allocations between refugees that are coming from Afghanistan and other countries, the amount of money that's allocated to the resettlement agencies is much different and less. So the money that they're getting, I think it's like $1,200 per member, per family. Some of that has to go back to paying for the airline tickets. So it's amazing that the federal government would bring them here and helped us in the war that we were in there, and now we're telling them to be safe, you've got to pay for your airline ticket. It doesn't make sense to me.
Well, I will follow up with Dr. Siebert on this. I understand the information I put in the email where I think it was $1,300 per person that they were given cash and then supported by the local services, but I don't have that information, so I'll just follow up and clarify with the council.
And we'll get back to you? We'll get back to the councils?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Further discussion on any of these items? Councilor Stevens.
In regards to 19A, we're into phase 2 of the strike team deployment, correct?
Yes.
And thank you very much. I've been following up with you repeatedly. I do have a facility. They're jumping for joy this morning knowing that they can open the wing. So I very much appreciate your follow-up on that. This center is also very happy that there's a nurse in the leadership role at DHHS, and they're very happy to work with you. And lastly, they're getting, I think, $86,000 from Gopher. So all of this is keeping this long-term care facility operational. So well done, and thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Gatsby?
Thank you, Governor. There's an awful lot of COVID money that's out here. Is there any way we can look at maybe taking care of these Afghan families and their flights? If they're coming here, I mean, it's just a suggestion, and somebody could look at it,
We're happy to look at it.
because we certainly are giving a lot of money out for a lot of different things.
I never heard that about the price, so we'll definitely look at it, and if possible, then provide those resources. If they take a look at it, I think the final guidance on ARP money came out. It's just over 1,000 pages of guidance. God bless Lisa English in my office, whose job is to understand every page of that 1,000 pages. She's very good. She is very good. So I'll take a look. Further discussion on any of these items? Okay. With that, all in favor of items 15 through 19A, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? And those items are approved. I'll now ask for a motion to adopt agenda items 20 and 21 from the Department of Health and Human Services from the Division of Economic and Housing Stability. Any discussion? Councilor Stevens.
Contract planning, I had a discussion with one of their outreach team managers, and it's very exciting. They're going to be opening up their Rochester facility very soon, and additionally, a Concord facility is in the works. So I've worked with this organization before. They're marvelous, and I just tip my hat and want to give them a shout out. And they want you back at the sleepover.
I'll be at the sleepover. Are they going to do it? Are they doing it virtually? Do you know? Do you know what they're doing this year?
It's March 26th. We can find out.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I don't think it's like virtually from your living room.
No, but last year was your backyard, I think, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, they did it kind of virtually in your backyard.
But follow-up, we know that homelessness is as high as 130 in some portions of the state and 110, and the work that they do is critical. So again, Waypoint is doing a wonderful job.
Further discussion on 20 or 21? Okay. There are no further questions. All in favor of items 20 and 21, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those items are approved. I'll now ask for a motion to adopt agenda items 22, 23, and 24 from the Department of Health and Human Services from the Division of Behavioral Health. Motion second. Any discussion on any of these? Councilor Kennedy?
Yes, I have a question on 24. So, Commissioner, can you just kind of explain the strike teams, and how many personnel on the strike team, and what each individual does within that strike team? And I just wanted to bring out a fact that, you can read it right on the contract. But you're saying when it comes to the psychiatric beds in New Hampshire in 2019, for I believe individually for 605, and then it shot up to I think 1,038 a couple of years later, with a collective wait time of 5,014 days for psychiatric beds in New Hampshire, which is 5 times greater than 2 years prior. It's really unprecedented. And you're stating that COVID is driving this?
Yes. Well, I mean, when you look at youth when they're out of school, when they don't have their extracurricular activities, they lack their social supports, their routines are just off, especially during 2020 when so many schools were remote. And then there's fear of COVID, parents being home from school, just the lack of social support in their network really caused an unprecedented rise in the need for behavioral health for youth and children. And we saw that both in our ERs and our waiting list, our requests for services to our children's system of care. We've seen that across the continuum of care. So our strike teams, the specific strike team for Hampstead right now, they have the capacity, they have 111 beds licensed. They're running between 40 and 45 beds at Hampstead. We had the opportunity to go to Maxim. Maxim has staff lined up and ready to go into Hampstead to increase the number of beds at Hampstead to take kids directly out of the ER and put them in the hospital. It's not going to solve all of our problems, but it's going to make it better. It's going to be a complement of nurses, social workers, mental health workers.
Gotcha. So each strike team has, is there a specific amount of people in each strike team?
Yeah, so when we think of this as a team, it's actually, we're looking at 18 positions, and so that they can do the 24/7 and integrate themselves into the Hampstead staff. So they won't be coming in as a group and treating just a specific set of youth or a unit. They'll be integrated within the staff to augment that staff as needed, because as you can imagine, on a day-to-day basis, the needs change based on whether a staff member's out sick or there are different needs.
So with the staffing agency that's going to staff these personnel, so they go in and build one strike team first, and then come in with the second strike team later?
It's really about increasing beds. So if they're able to provide us with, let's say, 6 staff over a 24-hour period, we can increase by, let's say, 2 beds or 3 beds. So the more people they provide, the more beds that we can open at Hampstead. And I think our overall goal is what at Hampstead for this strike team, up to 20 beds. So as they bring in staff, we will continue to ratchet up the beds that are available at Hampstead, because these teams will be graded into the staffing model at Hampstead to just increase the overall capacity.
Okay. I got it. Thank you.
Councilor Gatzis.
Thank you, Governor. The 2.2 million is just for a 6-month period?
Yes. So this, as we've talked about in previous meetings, the staff don't come cheap. When we need to hire in this capacity, this is the cost that it requires.
Is that the $300 an hour?
We have the breakdown that is in, I believe you have it in your packet, the breakdown for what is the hourly wages and all of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the wages are definitely competitive with what we're seeing in strike teams in other settings, during COVID especially, but something that's important to note is that we are only paying for services rendered. So it's not like it's $2.2 million, period. It's we need to see those staff showing up, delivering the services opening the beds.
Well, I would assume that the number of children that we have in emergency rooms, that they're going to fill the beds.
We hope so. That's the intent, is to take kids out of the emergency room and put them in an inpatient bed.
And how many beds are available?
We estimate between up to 20, at least 10. It depends on acuity, it depends on the demographics of the patient needs coming in.
So this 2.2 million is for support services of 10 beds?
Up to 20 beds. Up to 20. 24/7 for 6 months.
I think some of the benefits of this also are not only in getting those kids the services they need in a timely and therapeutically appropriate way, but also reducing the burden on emergency departments that currently have so many strains. So having these kids who are acutely psychiatrically ill right now has many additional cumulative costs.
I understand that the length of stay is probably about 7 days at Hampstead, 7 to 10 days. So it's not like we're serving 20 kids. Those beds are going to turn over every 10 days. So you're talking about serving hundreds of kids.
We estimate about 250 kids, conservatively.
If I may, about on any given day, I'm looking continuing the recent numbers, we'll have 7 to 8, up to 30 maybe kids waiting for an emergency bed. Something like that on any given day. It could be as low as in the single digits, but it can also be as high as 30. So 20 new beds would be pretty common. And more. I mean, there's capacity there down the road.
I think we put in the letter the first 2 months of December, it was averaging about 15 per day. It varies. The holidays have their seasonal impacts, but this is a number that every one of those kids, every one of their families, it really, the smaller we can keep the number, the less the consequences downstream on all systems.
Are we ever going to look at staffing it ourselves?
So you approved the Hampstead Acquisition today. What will be coming forward is in the coming months is a third party to run Hampstead, and it's a 2-year contract. We are actually beginning the RFP proposal now to post for at the end of that 2 years to see what we're going to get for bids. So you saw the cycle it goes through with Nathan this morning. It takes, especially for something as complex as running a hospital, an RFP process can take about 12 months. So we're going to start writing that now. So whether it becomes state-run or state third-party is unknown right now. I think we haven't started that process, but I think our intent is to continue to contract with behavioral health specialists to assist us in running it. But I don't know the degree. If it's going to be like New Hampshire Hospital where it's just the doctors, or if it's going to be the doctors and nurses and social workers, those are the things that we're still discussing.
What happens if we have 20 kids in services?
Like in the emergency room?
If there are 40 kids that have to go to Hampstead Hospital,
So
what does that number change from 2.2 million to what?
that's a not to exceed. So if we have 40 kids and we don't have enough beds, then we're going to have kids waiting in the emergency room. I mean, the overall goal, when I have the opportunity to come back and talk about inpatient beds, right? Hampstead Hospital right now is running at 45 beds. When the state acquires it, the goal is to open more additional acute beds, additional PRTF beds, so for kids that need longer lengths of stay, and then also contract with other hospitals that can run a small children's unit. We want more than one facility doing children's services in our state. Hampstead is one, and hopefully in the coming months we'll have a second one.
That was an item 9 today.
It was another item, yes.
Okay.
Further discussion on any of these 3 items? Okay, all in favor of items 22, 23, and 24, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those items are approved. I'll now ask for a motion to adopt agenda items 25 and 26 from the Department of Health and Human Services, the Division of Long-Term Supports and Services.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of 25 and 26, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those items are approved. I'll now ask for a motion to adopt agenda item 27 from the Department of Health and Human Services, the Division of Children, Youth, and Families.
So moved. Second?
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 20. Did I do it? Did I do it? Oh, and item 27 is approved. We do have a late item from the Department of Health and Human Services, late item A. I'll begin by asking for a motion to adopt late item A from the Department of Health and Human Services from the Office of the Commissioner.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Councilor Whitley?
Very quickly, and when are we expecting the test kits to be available for college?
7 to 10 days after we order them, so we expect to place our order in next week.
Okay, all in favor of late item A, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Late item A is approved. That concludes our items from the Health and Human Services. Moving on, could I have a motion to adopt agenda items 28 and 48 from the Department of Transportation? Any discussion? Councilor Gadd.
42.
Item 42.
Does that have to do with exit 4A?
Sorry, which item I couldn't hear?
Item 42.
Item 42? No, item 42 pertains to a construction contract. I believe you might be referencing item 32.
32, I'm sorry. You wrote the wrong
You're
number.
correct.
council another contemplated award item with compensation to property owners associated with the project.
Thank you. We will be seeing something come in from the designer soon.
Yes, we're coordinating with Jonathan to do an update on Exit 4I at a breakfast meeting. We're hoping the February meeting, but I'm not sure what other items the council is looking to address at that meeting. It will either be February or early March.
Okay.
Sorry.
Contract number 37, interstate bridge agreement. We're looking at this, the state made this very well. They're doing the lion's share of their work. And there's great parity, but indirect costs. Could you break down, there's over 100,000 for indirect costs, and Maine does not. This is on contract number 37.
So because New Hampshire is the lead, we'll be advancing the design, and all of the administrative costs and indirect costs will be accrued by New Hampshire, not by Maine. And we alternate with the state of Maine, depending on the bridge project. Sometimes they take the lead, sometimes we take the lead. In this case, we've been working closely with the town of Milton, so New Hampshire's taking the lead.
So you trade back and forth, and is that the case with Vermont and Massachusetts?
With Vermont, we own a larger percentage of all of those bridges based on where the state line has been established, so typically New Hampshire is the lead. But with Maine, because the costs are split 50-50, for example, the Memorial Bridge, we were the lead, whereas Sarah Long, they were the lead. So it depends on the specifics of the project. One other work each state is undertaking at the same time. But we have a really terrific working relationship with the state of Maine.
Thank you.
Councilman Wilmington.
Just on item number 44, I just want to express my appreciation again to the Department of Transportation for its action to get Route 12 open after the damage that was done as a result of the flooding. Do you have any idea when it will be open?
So the contractor has been given until the end of April to complete all of the work associated with this repair. We reviewed all their submittals in December, and so they started work January 3rd, and so we're very confident that they will be done on time. Of course, we're continuing to monitor how weather might impact their progress.
And does that include the bridge will be open then?
The whole roadway will be open and traffic will be established.
Thank you, and thank you for keeping the town so up to date on this. It's been very important to businesses, to schools, everybody in that area. Appreciate your work here. Thank you.
Yes, just a few contracts. Back to Agenda 37 with the one contract. When do you anticipate that work to start? When do you anticipate to complete?
That work is scheduled for 2023, and so depending on when exactly we advertise, it should be one construction season, but it might be a little longer than that duration if we advertise in the fall.
I remember talking to you about a year ago about this bridge, and every time I go by there, I see in years I can see it.
It was closed in 2011, so yes, we appreciate it.
Which basically blocked out the main, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's safe for the local travelers that have relationships and relatives on the other side of the bridge. It's a unique inconvenience. But yeah, it's a long time. So the other question I had was on no, I take that back. It has to do with it's 29 actually. So with the 5-year maintenance agreement on Route 110 with the city of Berlin. So if I understand this, they've been trying to acquire the extension of the urban compact from kind of where we're looking at Push over to Jericho Park, where the state park is. So they want to kind of redevelop that corridor. So you have a lot of maintenance items that you're going to fix in the next 5 years. Is that ever going to be on the Tennant Highway Improvement Plan?
No, we will complete a full range assessment, but the nature of the repairs It's replacing drainage pipes and doing basic resurfacing. So that would be incorporated into our typical resurfacing program. It wouldn't be a standalone project. Typically, the drainage work is done by our own forces in advance of paving, and then the paving contracts, we pave multiple sections within a district, and those contracts come before you for approval. But the scope of work, it doesn't warrant an individual project in this case.
So when would the city of Milton take it over?
In 5 years.
In 5 years?
Yeah, we're going to gradually, because this will be done with our own forces, do the work that was planned on our regular routine maintenance schedule, and then once all of the drainage repairs have been done and the paving is done, that's when they'll take it over. But they have control immediately. The compact has been extended so that they will have control of permitting of driveways as the development occurs along 110, but we will continue to advance the work that we've already anticipated doing over the next 3 to 5 years.
So additionally, when it comes to economic development, the city could apply for federal or state grants to improve the water system or the sewage system up through the corridor.
Whatever investments they feel are necessary to support economic development, they'll be free to pursue those grants. We'll still be their partner so that we could coordinate the maintenance work that we have planned around any other work that might need to occur within the right of way. And then, of course, depending on the size and scale of development, there might be turning lanes or additional improvements needed for the particular driveways as the development occurs.
Great. And they're happy. Ned Render's happy with this.
Everybody's very happy with this arrangement. It was a good compromise where we do the work that we have planned, but they get to control the corridor and the control.
The other agenda was 34, which it says the Friends of the Northern Rail Trail. Somehow they're acquiring some part of the rail trail for that northern trail that goes from Boston to Redmond. What exactly is going to transpire with this contract?
So this particular item is for us to accept the funds from the Friends of the Northern Rail Trail. We've been trying to, in accordance with the RSA, preserve the integrity of the corridors by having the state own the corridor. But in this case, the Friends of the Northern Rail Trail were able to raise the funds necessary to acquire this segment up to Boston.
So if there were ever an attempt to reconnect the rail line from Boston to Lebanon, and they own that segment, what would happen?
They don't own it, we own it.
So that, what are they purchasing then?
They are helping us purchase the corridor from Pan Am, so that the state will retain the corridor for transportation purposes.
Gotcha. So it's Pan Am that's involved in that. Okay. And then the last question I had was in regards to North Coast, kind of improving your bridges along some sort of like philosophy. Is that going to be enough money for them to improve those 5 bridges?
So this was an item that the railroad submitted during the capital budget process. So this is the one that estimated the cost of doing the work. The state's contribution is capped at $250,000. So if the cost of the repairs exceeds the current budget, then the private railroad would be responsible for paying it.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Councilor, just a quick question on the Wilton Railroad crossing that we go through the item. Where are we at with sitting down with the powers be Wilton to work that out?
So the budget manager was back in touch with the town and the new town administrator to try and identify a date. I believe, I don't recall, sometime early February, I think a meeting has been set, and then we'll be sending out a notice to all the interested parties.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Number 28 and 40 from DOT, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Items are approved. I want to ask for a motion to adopt agenda items 49 and 50 from State Treasury.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those items are approved. Could I have a motion to adopt agenda item 51 from the Department of Military Affairs and Veteran Services?
So moved.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 51 is approved. I'll now ask for a motion to adopt agenda item 52 from the Department of Agriculture, Markets and Food.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 52 is approved. Could I have a motion to adopt agenda items 53, 54, and 55 from the Insurance Department?
So moved.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those items are approved. Could I have a motion to adopt agenda item 56 from New Hampshire Employment Security?
Second.
Any discussion? On item 56. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 56 is approved. Could I have a motion to adopt agenda items 57, 58, and 59 from the Department of Corrections?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Councilor Warrington.
Good morning, members of the council. Helen Case, Commissioner of the Department of Corrections for the record.
Good morning, Commissioner. Just wanted to follow up on the National Guard that's working in our corrections facilities now. I know you said you had 30 retirements or 25 retirements. You talked that there were only 9 people enrolled in the academy right now. So just kind of wondering what the long-term plan is to make sure that we have adequate staffing as we move the National Guard out of those facilities.
Thank you for that question, Councilor Wellington. I'd be happy to send to the council what we've done as an agency on the recruitment and retention efforts for corrections and keep a running summary of that, because I think that would be informational. What's the long-term plan, as I believe I discussed the last time, is to examine our security ranks and use that reallocation process to make sure, as a member of law enforcement through the Division of Personnel, that we're now in 2021 and further putting forward competitive salaries for what I would call nationally as a limited scope of people interested in going into law enforcement. So that is an action item we're working on. The other part I would just recollect on is our average population incarcerated in New Hampshire has gone down approximately 38%. So we've leveraged opportunities to shut down areas of the prison that has reduced our number of post-reform daily. And that's what's helped us as our staffing has declined. For example, at the men's prison, we closed 196 beds on the second floor of Hancock Building. That's a large area that let us reduce 10 posts in a 24-hour schedule. We're looking to do the same at women's because we have a 64-bed unit that is underutilized in space, so we can create appropriate space spreading in a congregate setting, but also shut down that C3 unit. So we're using all of those appropriate strategies. Well, I also work with national correctional leaders in the space because all corrections organizations, with the exception of one state who did something unprecedented, and I will get that out to you, that's Nebraska. We have our state, so I apologize there, are struggling in this area because we're all competing in law enforcement, whether it's police or Fish and Game or whatnot in each state for a finite set of services. The other unique thing we've done in New Hampshire, we started a high school curriculum at Berlin High School, and that has done very well, and we're looking to impart those type of opportunities and look, yes, in high school, because I don't believe a lot of people understand what a career corrections is and how diverse it is. And we use all our professionals because it's not just our security force, it's our nursing force, it's our behavioral health force, it's even our kitchen and logistics services. It takes a whole community of professionals to run a correctional organization. So as you hear my fellow peers in the state talking about their staffing issues, we experience it across all those professionals.
Well, certainly support efforts to make sure that our correctional officers are paid fair and competitive.
I truly appreciate that.
Just to be clear, corrections officers have gotten a bigger raise over the past 4 years than any other department in the state.
Yeah,
So let's be very clear.
I think that
20%.
The governor, the problem is, as the commissioner has said, that there is a disparity between what law enforcement correctional officers are paid and what law enforcement officers are paid across the state and other places. And just to make sure that there's a look at that, to make sure that our correctional
Well, obviously, we've looked at it. to be frank, if they've gotten a bigger raise than anyone else, then obviously that's because we really dug into it and tried to make substantial changes over the previous administration.
With all due respect, though, they're still very much underpaid as compared with other comparable services.
And we'll keep working on all 10,000 employees.
And Councilwoman, if I could add, several things happen at the legislative level that came toward the end of different finance years where members of the legislature put things in HB2 that created a larger disparity, as the governor's referenced to that 20% increase since 2017. And we, the agency, hold some responsibility in making sure that we look at job descriptions and use the right process annually. And that's part of the whole inertia of things I'm correcting within the Department of Corrections, including changing our internal organizational structure. You've never even had a director to oversee our personnel and information, and that is part of the Senate bill that's moving forward this year, because staffing should be at the forefront of what we're trying to accomplish there.
Great, thank you for that.
Just to follow up on that, is there a certain percentage of staff in the amount of prison population? I mean, is there a standards that...
That's a great question, Councilor Kennedy, and a complex question. It depends on how the fiscal plan is designed. So you have to look at what your bed space was literally designed to manage, and then which resident population is, and your classification level or security level of the person. And there's a large National Institute of Corrections manual that discusses that.
And the other question is, I assume is, in that part, mobilizing the corrections file, and historically, fully supporting the correctional officer capacity or giving them support. How long do we see that in place? Is it a 6 month?
It's just 90 days, if I...
90 days?
Correct, from the start of our academy to the end of our academy. And I want to just remind the council, my staff are also getting ill, so I have 47 people out ill. Just as similar to last year, the one thing I did not forecast is the number of retirements we experienced in December. Absent those retirements, we'd be in a better situation than we were last year.
Well, thank the National Guard for being
They're an excellent partner, and I would like to publicly thank the corrections staff working every single day that continue to persevere to deliver great services and rehabilitation programs while we also provide safety and security.
Yeah, thank you.
Further discussion on any of these items? Okay, thank you. Hearing none, all in favor of items 57, 58, and 59, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? These items are approved. Good to see you, General. Everything good?
Everything's good, sir. I'm pleased.
I'll now ask for a motion to adopt agenda item 1661 from the Department of Energy.
Second.
Any discussion? Councilwoman.
Morning, Commissioner. Just noting that the highest cost bidder was awarded the contract, and no question in your decision to do that, but we're not given the amount of difference between the price here. We're just given the point value, and I'm wondering if you know the amount of the difference between those two bids, the highest and the lowest. You have it?
So for item 60, River Consulting Group, opening proposal $335,820, and the under bidder or the non-selected proposal is $322,782. And for item 61, the difference, River Consulting Group $270,000, and the non-bid proposal $215,088.
Okay. Thank you.
Further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of item 1661, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Items are approved. Thank you, Commissioner. I'll now ask for motion to adopt agenda item 62 from the New Hampshire Liquor Commission.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item is approved. I'll now ask for motion to adopt agenda items 63 through 66 from the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources. Any discussion?
I just wanted to compliment the commissioner and staff for hosting Cannon Mountain Military Appreciation Day last Saturday. and also for hosting the State Park Mason Ski Jump Winter Carnival. And their director Bryce was up there overseeing that activity. It's two great events and a great day. A lot of people had a lot of fun, particularly the kids.
Any other questions on these items? Councilor Stevens?
Item number 64.
Good morning, Sarah Stewart, Commissioner of the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources.
Thank you. So this plan at Oregon involving Seacoast Garden Center, a large change to the Sugden House, and you forwarded the schematics. The square foot increase, what will that be? I see the schematics.
So I believe these are preliminary concept renderings of a very large project that we had a lot of communication with the Seacoast Science Center. The Executive Director, Jim Chase, is here, and I'm happy to share the email that you received of the schematics to the rest of the councilors if they're interested. I cannot speak to the specific programmatic additions to the building. If you have specific questions like that, I would want to defer to Jim and his team.
I think at some point it would be great to, inform the councilors on what the proposed sort of footage is. I think it's important information to share. I also had a question regarding contributions to the state on rental fees. Their fees are going up 65% in '23. The current system is that they pay $1 per guest versus 5%. I think that needs to be reevaluated. The number of events, I think it's important to quantify. Is there going to be the incorporation of food service? Events provided by the center operator shall not unreasonably interfere with public use of the park. What does that mean?
Thank you. I'm happy to call Director Bryce, who has put a lot of mental capacity towards this agreement. We've had a lot of conversations with the team at the Seacoast Science Center, and I'm really proud of the partnership that we've formed over the years. Many of you, or all of you, have been there for past executive council meetings, and so we're really excited about the possibilities that will happen there as an additional draw and activity point for our state park guests. Specific to the dollar agreement, I defer to Director Bryce.
Okay, good morning, Governor. Good morning, Councilor. Good question. I need to take a quick look at the language, but basically when they hold events like weddings and other events that are not programmatic, related to the programs that they have going on at the park, we collect a certain fee for those people attending a wedding or something else to use the park. Normally, we're the ones that conduct those activities, so we would receive the fees. We have other pavilions. We have an item coming forward for a tenant again this year at Rye Harbor, but it's not. It's because those people that are coming into the park, like the other visitors, are getting access to the park, not just for their event. So we often do, being a self-funded park system, when somebody generates revenue off of the park, we usually look to receive compensation for that, particularly when it's outside something like a wedding or another company event that is not related to our shared mission.
Any sort of studies on what this expansion will mean to the park system? What sort of increase in attendance? You have a finite amount of parking there. So
yes, that's a very, very good question. We are going to look to try to address the parking issue going forward. We've been wanting to expand that parking lot and the parking capacity for some time. We have some other space at the park where we'll be a little bit more strategic about how we accomplish the parking. But I point out that what we're trying to do today is to get your support to be able to take those next steps, to raise the money, to develop the plans, and to take those next steps to move the project forward. We can't do that unless we change the agreement, because they need to start investing in drawings and engineering and those sorts of things. So that's a very, very good question. Jim Chase and I have had that conversation. We do need to address parking. We do anticipate an increase in the number of visitors in the park, and a number of visitors that are in the Seacoast Science Center as well as in the park, and I think that's a really good thing. They do a great job.
Utilities, we're going to be responsible for 80% of utilities, and gradually transferring, full ownership of those utilities to Seacoast Science Center. Why? Why is that structured that way?
Right now, we're paying all the utilities, and we spent, I don't know, I think then Councilor Saluda was involved, and we spent 5 or more years renegotiating the agreement. If you go back to the chapter law, the Seacoast Science Center is actually supposed to be contributing to the Parks Fund and to the operation of the park financially. We do not require them to make payments to the Parks Fund. So even though that was the original intent, was that they would actually generate revenue. But what we've come to realize is that to secure their presence at the park over the long term, if they pick up the utilities so that the park isn't paying for them, for our park system, that helps secure them to be there, hopefully indefinitely. So we're currently paying the expenses. We did work on a project to have a solar array put on the building, which has cut the expenses tremendously, because that was one of the biggest expenses with electricity. So it won't be the burden in the future that it was in the past. But we've been talking a long time now, probably, I don't know, five years or so, about if the Seacoast Science Center can, for their operation, pay the expenses. That really helps secure them, and also because we're self-funded, helps secure the funding for the park system. Because we have other people that are on our sites. We don't pay the utilities for White Mountain Attractions. We don't pay the utilities for the AMC hut up at Lonesome Lake. Usually when somebody's using a building, we look for them. But years ago, the Seacoast Science Center was trying to get on their feet, and it was agreed that the state would help support them. And now, that because they're really good at what they do, and they have a great board and a wonderful staff, they put themselves in a much better financial position.
I applaud the work they've done with their camps. They've remained operational. They've been a great neighbor, but I'm just concerned that we don't have the answers on how this expansion is going to affect the park. This is a 20-year lease, and I understand that they have to recoup at 39 years their investment, but we also have to balance, the public's use. This is a 501c3, so it's a balancing act. But again, I appreciate everything that they've done. But it's a 20-year lease with, which is somewhat atypical, but then with another 20-year renewal option.
Right.
So it's talking with DAS, it is atypical. So I just want to proceed cautiously on behalf of my constituents on the Seacoast and everyone who loves Seacoast Science Center. Excuse me, Ordeon and Seacoast Science Center.
Yes, if I can respond. Please. Yeah, one of the options for us as part of this project, they're looking at raising $10+ million for this expansion. One of the options is for us to include some of our parks administration and even operations, such as we've been wanting to put concessions out there, having that incorporated into the building. Going forward, we left that option open, open in the agreement. So, and in terms of the term of the lease, yes, it is long. We have a long agreement with Sunapee Ski Area. We have a long agreement with the Franconia Ski Club, with the White Mountain Attraction. So it might be uncommon for other agencies, but for us, it's increasingly common as we look for people to make investments into the park's facility in terms of that partnership. So it's not, we've done it multiple times. And we feel very comfortable with this. They came to us with a much longer time period. We said, no, we can't do that. We can do 20 years with an option to renewal, with an intent to renew, but it's subject to Governor and Council approval. But if they're going to raise and invest that kind of money, they need some sense that they're going to be able to be there a certain amount of time so that their donors will help them. Because one of the big things they do there is they raise funds from donations quite a bit that probably wouldn't come to the park, but then gets invested in the experience of the park. And that's one of the great things about the partnership.
It's just a little loose at this time. Is there going to be a restaurant? I think it's important for everyone to see the schematics on how the building will be transformed. And again, it's a big investment by Seco Science Center, and it's a big commitment by the state.
It's sort of I'm not sure what we do if we don't have this in place in terms of going forward with designs and schematics and getting all the details worked out. Certainly, we'll be sharing those going forward. And what we did is we built into it like we did with the Franconia Ski Club building. Our approval of the building, the materials, the design, everything. And that contract, which was, I think 20 years or even longer, we were right on top of what they were going to do, so they just couldn't do everything that they wanted to. And if you'd like to be, we're glad to have you be engaged in that process, but they're going to have a difficult time raising the money for the project and then committing those funds to doing the design work unless they have this agreement in place.
But as I said, it's a balancing act to preserve, protect our state parks, and to make sure, again, if this is a successful investment. I'd like to make a motion to table until we have additional materials.
Okay. I'm not clear. So are there additional materials we can provide without the engineering?
No. So right now we have a concept from the Seco Science Center and a very thoughtful piece of paper that sort of makes sure that they're not going to design something that's not fitting within our vision for the park and without our approvals. So right now we're just asking for support so that they can go out, raise the funds, and then hire a designer, hire an engineer, work with us to come up with those specifics that you're looking for, rightfully so, but they can't go out and invest $100,000 in that consultant without commitment that they can raise the money to do this. So we don't have additional specific details. We need to work on those, exactly what you listed, and more. But we can't ask them to provide that without them being able to raise the money to pay for that.
We can table, but I just want to set expectations right. I don't think there's anything else to provide, is my understanding. I don't mean to speak for you, but it sounds like there's really nothing else to provide.
We're not approving any building right at this. That's not what we're asking for you to do at this juncture. We're asking for support so that they can have the confidence in their donors. They're ready to write the check. They just want to see the state approving the partnership so that they can deliver the check, and then they can hire the engineers and we can hammer out all of those details to have the confidence that they are striking the balance and that our guests are benefited from this.
So is there still a motion to table? Okay, so we still have a motion to table. Is there a second?
Second.
Can I ask a question? Bias delaying it by 2 weeks or will we impact week?
I would like to show support for the wonderful partners that we have with Seco Science Center. We've been working on this for, a year. So it just delays the confidence and the fundraising of the project.
So if we delay it 2 weeks, what information are you going to get within a 2-week period? Nothing?
I mean, I know Jim Chase well enough now to not put words in his mouth, but he's willing to talk to anybody about this endeavor and provide any additional details that he has available. What we submitted to you is what we currently have available, but he, I'm sure, would be willing to sit down with anyone to talk through additional concepts or ideas.
Sorry, I'm just going to ask Councilor Gatsby. So.
Thank you, Governor. I can't see the reason for tabling this. This thing should be moving forward. They're a great partner. They aren't going to do something we're not going to be aware of. They're coming back to whatever, with us, whatever plans they have. So I would ask this council to move this forward.
Well, we do have a motion and a second, so in honor of that, all in favor?
Oh, so I'm sorry, clarification. Are you coming back with plans for this? I don't think so.
No, we don't. We do not come back to council with the specific plans. What we did is with the SC, we had our 2 architects, along with myself, reviewing them very carefully, and also, of course, the key player is the fire marshal's office. And so we work also very closely with them because they have to make sure they comply with the code.
Okay, Councilor Warman.
Will you be back to us with construction contracts?
No, they will be paying for the construction themselves unless we come forward as in some way as part of the project and need a contract to assist in the construction in some way. We would be coming back with that, depending on, hopefully we'll be incorporating some of the parks activities into this so that it's all in one location. It could be, but right now, if all the construction is taken care of by the Seacoast Science Center, once they've submitted all of their permits and approvals, historic resources, heritage, land and water conservation fund, all those approvals, plus our architects and myself and the commissioner, the director and the commissioner, then it would not come back to council.
So if I may just be clear, the construction contract would come back, but you still have a checks and balance on what actually gets done.
Yes, we'll be fully engaged, and we can present at a breakfast meeting, present schematics, answer more questions. We're a partnership at that state park, and we would be, Phil attends all of the board meetings, so we're working very closely, and they want to be aligned with our vision at the state park as well.
So we do have a motion and a second to table, so all in favor of...
This really impacts the District 3 executive counselor. Can you kind of express to the other counselors how strong you are with this tabling motion, or whether you'd be comfortable enough to let this thing go forward?
I've had calls from constituents who are concerned about this growth. It's somewhat unprecedented, the length of this lease, and I'm not certain what this expansion is going to mean to the park.
So will 2 weeks give you enough time to get more answers?
Perhaps they will get back to us with some more definitive answers on how this is going to impact the park.
So you're not giving us, the council, 2 weeks, it could be 4 weeks, it could be 6 weeks, or...
I would want to have some answers.
Okay. I think you're
My
going to answer one
constituents
way
would
or
like
another.
Yeah, my constituents would also. It's a wonderful partner, I get it, but this is a big investment for both parties.
Councilor Gatsby.
What happens if they walk away?
Gatsby's Inc. can rent the building.
No.
Yeah, it becomes and they walk away.
If they walk away,
You've got a different partner or different use for the facility?
I believe that their mission that they carry out is supportive of the mission of the state park, especially all of our state parks in the Seacoast, and it would be very hard to replace that.
But from a business point of view, they aren't doing any designs until they get this approval.
Right.
So there's nothing more to see until we approve it.
Right. They just want to raise the money try to move concept forward.
I think the only thing they can talk about is what they're trying to accomplish in that space, but the specific design of the space is quite a ways down the road. And if this isn't approved, then and not signed off on, then we just continue as we have been, and that additional investment in the facility to meet some of the needs and opportunities they see, we won't be able to take advantage of that. So.
That facility is starting to need work.
Pardon?
That facility is starting to need work.
Yeah, the thing that, again, I go back to that I really like about the agreement, just from strictly a park standpoint, is that they're picking up now, we just spent $50,000 on our roof. We won't have to do that in the future under this agreement. They're going to be picking up the maintenance costs. It's going to improve the financial, there's going to be more visitors. It's going to improve the financial condition of the park system by doing this, by entering into this agreement.
Oh, Councilwoman, I'm sorry.
I know this is a motion to table, so I appreciate you.
No, sure, no, it's obviously, I don't make sure.
I guess even more concerning than his partner walking away, that seems unlikely, but not so unlikely that their donors might be discouraged by a lack of support from the state. And if there was other information that would be forthcoming, I certainly would support tabling, but I would be concerned that this organization, there's a lot of people competing for charitable dollars, and they may be discouraged by a lack of support from the state. So, with no intended disparagement, to the needs of District 3, I just think on balance, I don't see the benefit, and I see some downside to tabling this.
Further discussion? Okay. Well, that's robust. All in favor? Let's make sure we have everything. All in favor of tabling item 64, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Okay, so item still out there, still hanging there. Further discussion on this or any of the other items? Okay. So all in favor of adopting items 63 through 66 from DNCR, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And those items are approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll now ask for a motion to adopt agenda items 67 through 73B from the Governing Office for Emergency Relief and Recovery. Any discussion on any of these items? Hiding back there, Taylor?
No, good.
And
Of course
saw
not.
a half a head poke up behind the door. I didn't say, please don't go on.
I don't know, that money's weighing him down.
It'd be great if Taylor came up here and moved with cash coming out of his pocket.
I wish he would. We could find some projects.
We can maybe arrange for that. You could have Taylor cancel an executive director.
So the issue is, there's a lot of contracts here, a lot of money, so, and I don't know where to begin, but I guess I'll begin at the top. So the service programs that go for increased funding, can you just kind of, I hate to do this, but I think if you could just simplify it going down each individual contract, because ultimately, we're going to have constituencies, organizations within our districts who are going to say, well, is there money for this? Is there money for housing? Is there money for small business? How do you get, the small business, how do they access this? And what's it for and all that? But I think it's that important that we come to really read that.
Okay, let me just run through the items real quick.
Absolutely.
Okay. Item number 67, that's funding for the administrative component of the Housing Assistance Fund. So this is a program that is not yet totally operational. It's similar to the Emergency Rental Relief Program, but it is for homeowners, for mortgage assistance. That's a program we've been waiting for the federal government to give us an okay to go ahead on, and we just recently have received that. This is the remaining portion of an administrative component that we pay to the New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority to administer that program and to get it ready to go once we get the full tranche of money.
So I do have a question.
Yes, sir.
So when the moratorium last year got outlived by Congress, and homeowners could now evict tenants, the legal system kicked in, and a lot of them are still hanging in those apartment situations. And I have one that's going to be evicted March 1st, but he's prolonged his stay for 4 months. So, and housing shortages, there's just not much there out there. It's like 0.06 million statewide. So the question is, can a homeowner that wanted to evict someone in the last 6 months, who felt that they lost the ability to make revenue for 6 months to improve the facility and to put it back out in a leased environment, can they receive any of this ARPA funding for the losses that they had for the last 6 months while it was under an eviction notice?
I might ask Chase Hagman, our Deputy Director, to get to that specific question, but just before he starts, a distinction. The Housing Assistance Fund is for single-family home ownership situations, so someone who owns their home. What you're referring to is under the Emergency Rental Assistance Program.
Right.
I know this gets confusing, that there's so many programs, but the ERA program is where the interaction between landlord and tenant occurs. So with regard to your question on this question.
Good question, Councilor. Actually, the full program for $45 million will be coming before fiscal GDC very soon once that money lands, because the plan has been approved. I'd have to look through the details of the plan a little more specifically on that question, because New Hampshire Housing Finance has developed a very robust plan with a lot of details that have specific measures that have to take place before assistance is provided.
If I may, I don't mean to interrupt, but that's on mortgage assistance. So let's back up to what I think the council is going to do. The rental assistance program that has been underway for quite some time, $80+ million. On that one, could those individuals, a landlord, still apply for rental assistance for someone who's on the verge of being evicted? I would imagine yes, but
So the program primarily runs through the landlords, yes. Honestly, I have to look back to see on that specific question on whether they could, because there can be application for rental arrears, but not necessarily, I think, mortgage assistance. I think it has to be specific.
I'm sorry, I don't need to, we're going to take mortgage assistance right off the table. Let's just, I know this one is for mortgage assistance, but I don't mean to keep putting, I don't want to ask the question quickly. You're really talking about the rental assistance program between a landlord and renter. Can that renter or landlord, either or, apply for funds for arrears? I'm pretty sure you can't, but I'm careful about saying that. I'm pretty sure that, yes, it can go backwards, too.
Right. So what I'm attempting to do, because I always selfish, because the knowledge you give me is what I do with my constituents. I'm trying to keep the gentleman in that house.
Right.
So he's got a roof over his head, but also appease the landlord and say, yeah, you lost a lot of money the last 6 months, and you should be able to reclaim that.
So you're asking, if you have a constituent who's in arrears currently and is not receiving funding from the emergency rental program, so if we get him in the program, is he able to apply?
He's got a voucher. He's not in arrears.
Okay.
But the value of that 6 months, in other words, he evicted him 6 months ago, but he obviously didn't leave, so he could have improved that apartment, brought it back out into the private sector, and made probably 40% more. But in that 6 month period, he wasn't able to do anything. Can he now go back and capture some of that investment loss?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. We'd have to check that out.
Okay.
We'll get back to you on that, that's sure.
Yeah.
That would open a big door.
Yeah, it would. And I'm not prepared to say that it is or isn't just yet, because it may be something that
really like a
Talk about a value difference.
Yeah.
Councilor
On the mortgage side, so what is the financial qualification to get mortgage assistance? How much money is that? Is there a cap on how much can go there? And are we putting a lien on these properties so we get our investment back at some point, or is this just giveaway money?
So that would all be part of the Homeowners Assistance Fund plan that would come before you for further review, where all that detail will be lined up. It's not before you today. This is just the administrative cost to help continue to set that program up. So I guess the short answer is, I don't have that answer for you right now. I'd have to present the actual plan in detail.
I bet it's free money.
Yeah, just, I don't know if I want to spend money setting up a free money program, so you kind of think it's got the cart before the horse, but you don't have any idea what the rules are going to be?
So yes, we do have some idea what the rules are because the federal government has specifically approved the plan within certain guidelines and requirements, and there are steps that have to be taken by the homeowner before they enroll in this program, so it's not just a sign up and get relief sort of situation.
What steps? How do they qualify to do that? Must be in the federal plan, tell me.
I'd be happy to provide that to you with additional detail with the plan. I don't have that before me right now. I don't want to speak out of turn on some requirements that may or may not be in there. But
they're asking for the money to develop the plan. You can't tell me what the plan's going to be. You can't even tell me what the feds say the rules already are. Why do they want to give you the money now?
So to answer your question in terms of the money already being received, a chunk of administrative money has already been provided to New Hampshire Housing Finance under a prior item to help develop this plan. This is simply the final tranche of the administrative to complete the setup, which I'm happy to provide all the details for you on that plan. I just don't have them with me here, and I apologize for that.
And I think we should table this item. We can't. No, we don't even know what we'll spend the money.
I would just add that the program itself was authorized by legislation, obviously, under ARPA. And then the federal government goes through a process at U.S. Treasury to define how we can define a program within those rules. We submit a plan that meets the generic rules but doesn't necessarily get to an extreme level of detail on eligibility outside of what that box is. And then we wait for the federal government to review all of that, and then they come back and say, okay, you can go now. Now, the original funding that was approved for the administrative cost of that program was used to develop the fund. So this is, I know what it sounds like, and it's
I can't believe you came here without even being able to tell me what the big box is.
Well, we're only looking for this particular authorization would be for the completion of that work, so that we can then have a program that we can then bring to you.
So none of these items following here are the actual dollars for mortgage assistance?
No. Okay. The rest of them are all the emergency rental assistance. Not all.
Well, but you can provide something, right? So if we were to table this for a couple of weeks, I just want to be clear, there's some other additional level of detail you could provide in terms of, at minimum, what we propose to the federal government. And I'm going to take it a step further. I don't mean to speak for Council with us. What we propose to the federal government can be long and really complicated. Maybe an executive summary of that, I can get to the point of what have we discussed in terms of eligibility, what have we discussed with them in terms of applicability or whatever. I don't know. Maybe there's just some sort of summary you could provide?
There is already an executive summary we can provide.
Okay. I don't mean to speak for you.
No, that was good.
So our CAPs have been responsible for disbursement and implementation of funding for emergency rental assistance. Will CAPs be responsible for implementation and disbursement?
Under the mortgage assistance program?
Yeah.
No, I believe it's a separate aspect of New Hampshire Housing Finance. I don't believe the CAPs play a direct role in that.
So it will stay within NHF?
Yes.
Stay within your agency? Thank you.
Is tabling this going to slow down the implementation of this program?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I just think we're going to get another chance to look at the program itself.
Correct.
And if we don't like it at that point, we can slow it down. I hate to put any obstacle in the way of, homeowners that are very needy out there right now for a program that is going to be available in some form, I presume, unless, this council votes it down. So, again, I don't think tabling at this point is the way to go.
Further discussion on the idea table.
So just a question, your tabling, what agenda items are we tabling?
67.
Just item 67.
And 73 is associated with 67.
Oh, okay, well, you just said none of the others.
I'm sorry,
Come on.
It's just the contract part of it. So the first is the authorization to expend. The second is the amendment to the contract.
I see, so it would,
So those go together. There's a couple that go together. I misspoke.
Okay.
Can you,
Yeah.
can you get the information for Councilor Wheeler before we adjourn today?
Yes. Yeah. Okay, if that's possible, we can do that.
So if we table it, we can take it back off the table once he gets the information.
Yeah, we can table it, we can take it up today, we can take it up whenever.
Okay.
So the motion is to table 67, 73?
Correct.
Okay, so we have a motion to table 67 and 73.
Second.
There's a second. All in favor of tabling those two items, please signify by saying aye.
Until just,
Opposed?
no, just so that we can get the information before the adjournment of the meeting.
Yeah, we'll try to get the information. Right?
It's on the table now.
Yeah.
We vote for it.
Yeah, it's on the table.
Yeah, we can take it off.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll bring it up to remove it if you so choose
Yes.
by the end of the meeting.
Thank you.
Further discussion on other items within Guilford. Yes,
So,
yeah, sorry, we were going down the list, right? We discussed number one.
He's answered all the housing questions, and that takes us down, so.
Okay.
But I did have a question on specific on consent. So this is the $50,000 that every town in New Hampshire is eligible for some type of a capital equipment for their town. I just heard recently that this program is extended out until June, is that correct?
Yeah, it's a rolling program.
Okay, so will we be getting updates at every government council meeting? And is it going to be much like the ARPA funding that went to towns and cities, whereby if they don't appear to use the money or express the money, that we're going to have to call them up and say, hey, you have $50,000 standing up?
Well, maybe when we get towards the end, if we see that no one's, there are certain towns that aren't touching it, we might want to follow up. But I think we're starting to hear from most localities that they intend to use this program. And it is different than that, what you're describing as the non-entitlement unit program. That's a different set of rules and so on. So this is much easier.
But I apologize, Councilor Kane, but just so I understand it, this is the program where a town has to say, oh, we're interested.
Yeah.
Every town doesn't get this money. The town has to ask it.
They have
to apply. You have to apply, yeah. And if I may, one of the issues that we've had is there's certain towns I've heard from saying, oh, this would be a great idea, and it's like, the program's out there, go after it. Like, a lot of towns, the program's been there, but they don't know it's there, so we're trying to encourage people. You guys have reached out, I know, a lot, but.
And this is specifically for emergency equipment and that sort of thing. So we're seeing like a lot of ambulance equipment and those sorts of things that towns are applying for.
And they have to provide 20% of that. 10%?
Just 10%.
So for that's 50,000 is what?
It's a good deal.
5,000?
5 grand to get it off.
5,000 for 5 grand?
Yep.
But it has to be a town that has requested, right?
Yeah.
And they're not profit.
Nope.
Great.
Councilwoman?
And what is the deadline for requesting the funding?
June 3rd. June 3rd.
So we can check in periodically and find out which of our towns haven't applied?
Yep.
Sorry.
Yes.
Trust you, 73. Councilor Kansas, did you have a question? Okay.
And just on 73, I appreciate that list and the wrap up of what our vote meant in December, the last meeting in December, as far as the people that awards for the CARES Act. Is that a specific deadline? I think that's December 31st, 2021. So I'm good with that.
Okay.
I have one more question while they're digging for information. So for the matter of being able to compare mortgage assistance to rental assistance, I had a former senator that called me that has some rental units, and he had both the husband and wife were fully employed, and the rent was like $2,100 a month, and they still got rental assistance. So I want to know what the income, what your income cap and qualifications for the rentals do, and we put that side by side with the mortgage assistance, please.
Better guidelines around very easy to get the rental. But yeah, any information you get on that separate building, absolutely.
I did have one last question the constituent asked me to ask the council. We have a lot of workforce housing requests for housing, but it's related to the department, not necessarily these contracts. Got requests in Conway, Wolfboro, Littleton, need workforce housing. Are we putting any ARPA money towards workforce housing? And where is it?
It's, so that is one of the subjects that we're working on right now. We should see something in the next month or two, but that is among the projects and the sort of the large areas that we've identified as suitable for our investment.
So, if I may, the question is very timely. We've been asking the Department of Treasury to use some of these funds, the rental funds and mortgage assistance funds, for just that. That's been rejected.
They haven't responded.
No, they responded.
Specifically,
I got the letter. Yeah. So within the last 24 hours, I received a letter that I believe specifically rejects that notion. You cannot use housing funds for more housing, is what the Biden administration has told us, which is baffling. It is a one-size-fits-all rental assistance only. So, yeah. So there are other avenues, though. There's other programs within ARP that I know these guys are looking into. But a lot of folks ask, why don't you use rental assistance funds for housing? Because the need isn't as strong on rental assistance because it's in bricks and mortar. We've been denied that opportunity.
Yeah, it makes sense, Gary. We're having a fight between the landlord and the tenants. One's trying to stay in, one's trying to get them out. And then at the same time, we have small companies and manufacturing companies that are saying, we need more workforce housing, or otherwise we can't expand our businesses.
What we need to do is change the definition of workforce housing, because it's no longer what it used to be when that term was put into effect some 20 years ago.
There's a lot of planning boards and folks that still think workforce housing is some type of 1978 Section 8 nonsense. That's not what we're talking about at all here. We're talking about housing, and part of the, I don't want to go off on a complete tangent, part of House Bill 400 really provides funds to educate a lot of these folks about what to your point, what workforce housing is, how it applies to their communities, and everything from styles and dynamics and the business people.
With the price of lumber and everything else, Section 8 housing is not inexpensive.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Oh, great.
Should I just stay here?
Oh, yeah. Okay, all in favor of items 68 through 72, plus 73 and 73B, 73A and 73B, but not 73, it's less than taken. All in favor of those items, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, those items are approved, and if you guys can just dig in a little bit on Council Wheeler's question and see if we can get answers by the end. Great. I'll now ask for a motion to adopt agenda items 74 through 79 to the Department of Business and Economic Affairs. Any discussion?
Yes. So there seems to be, there's a lot of money coming in through federal funds for small businesses. And your department is going to oversee the flow of money to the small businesses.
So under the two items that you're referring to, 74 and 75, the State Small Business Credit Initiative, these would move the program to the Business Finance Authority for them to administer. But again, the federal rules require that it come through an official agency of government. So we're entering into a contract with BFA to fully administer that program on behalf of the state.
So when I'm speaking to my small businesses, and they say there's, what, 161 million plus, or, what can I say to them? How are you eligible? What are the programs? I noticed in the contract to some degree, but how do you summarize it real quick?
Well, as luck would have it, I have, I'm going to phone a friend, James Key Wallace, is the executive director of BFA, is here, and he's been working on this for quite some time. He can answer your question as good, if not better, than I can.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Councilor. Everybody. For the record, James Key Wallace, Executive Director, BFA. The short answer, Councilor, is they should just call the BFA. There's a lot of different programs of this $61 million infusion funds. One thing we try not to ask people to do is have to go through the struggle of saying, which programs do I apply for, which programs am I eligible for? If they just reach out to the BFA, explain their situation, we can kind of just hold their hand and take them to the right place. Most of the time, it's actually starting with their bank. Because all of these programs, this money funds existing BFA programs. They're designed to get private capital to help more people. So you can start with your bank, see if they can help you. If you run into any trouble, call the BFA, and we'll get you.
And there's a requirement of funds that be leveraged to is it 10 to 1?
10 to 1.
So James is under the gun to total, $600 million out of the 60.
Yeah, the program from the feds requires for every dollar that we deploy, 10 times that amount of private sector capital participates in the transaction. So this $61 million grant will result in a minimum of $610 million of private sector capital going to connected businesses. Last time we did it, we actually had 13 to 1. So that would be like $780 million. It's a pretty powerful program.
Apply to nonprofits?
Pardon?
Does it apply to nonprofits?
Yes.
How long is the program for?
It's a 10-year program, technically, but it's truly infinite. So we're still actually recycling the same dollars from this same program from the post-2008 crash that gets used continually. So it's permanent.
So, again, I'm a grassroots guy. I had a coffee shop, profile banks across the street, and I got your number, BFA, and I know the commissioner, and I know the governor and my counselors, but they're going to say, what is this program? So how can you summarize it in 2 sentences?
The program is to help businesses get access to bank financing they might not otherwise be able to. So they're still a good business, they're growing, they're adding jobs, and there's different programs that work for very small businesses versus big businesses. So if they just reached out to us, we can help them get exactly where they want to go. I could go through the list of the 5 programs. I don't think you want to. You're all familiar. You see them all the time from the BFA. But it's to help you get financing to grow and add jobs.
Okay. That's a good 1 sentence. I like that. Okay.
Councilor Gaines?
So these aren't grant dollars?
Correct. It can't be used as a grant though. It has to go out. Money that has to come back.
Further discussion on any of these items from the evening? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of items 74 through 79, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those items are approved. Thank you. Thank you. I'll now ask for motion to adopt agenda items 80 through 91 from the Department of Environmental Services. Please note that item 90 is withdrawn. There's a motion. Second. Any discussion on these 10 items? Councilwoman.
Good afternoon, Governor and Councilors. For the record, Bob Scott, Department of Environmental Services.
Good afternoon, Commissioner. We spoke yesterday, and you guys looked into this, but on item number 83, the low bid which we accepted was $50,000. The other 2 bids were $350,000 and $375,000. And that disparity between bids raised my question about whether the low bidder actually is bidding on the same thing.
Sure. So thank you for that, Councilor. So this is a good news story with maybe some bad news coming up, I'll say. So again, what you'll see in the package, the filing is that we had 3 bidders out of the solicitation. One was roughly $50,000 and the other were $300,000 more, was the next closest, hence the question. So we had similar questions. So the good news is a couple of things. That was the bidder that we selected, the low bidder, was the only one to come on site, the only one to take measurements and do their due diligence. The rest of the other 2 kind of phoned it in, if you will. So, and then we went further because we're still worried about the disparity. Staff did at the Winnipesaukee River Basin project. and they actually called around. That entity had done work in New Hampshire for similar facilities, called, hey, what's your experience? And it was all very positive. So I think we feel very confident for this bidder in this project that A, they understand what they're bidding on, and B, that they can do it. I say maybe it's bad news because the fact that we didn't get a lot of other bids and the other ones were a lot more is an indication of what we're seeing in the market. There's a lot of work out there, and my opinion is some bidders are, well, let's throw something out and see if it gets taken because we have plenty of work. We don't have to really work that hard for these bids. So we'll see where we end up. I hope my last part is not correct, but that's the trend I think I'm seeing.
Okay, thank you for looking into it.
You're welcome.
Any further questions on any of these items? Okay, all in favor of items 80 through 91, with the exception of item 90 that has been withdrawn by the agency, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those items are approved. I'll now ask for motion to adopt agenda item 92 from the New Hampshire Veterans Home.
So moved.
Any discussion on item 92? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 92 is approved. I now ask for a motion to adopt agenda items 93 to 98 in the Department of Education.
Second.
Any discussion? Councilor Gadsden?
Thank you.
DOE. Hi. See you up there.
Good afternoon, Christine Levin, Department of Education. Mackenzie Department of Education.
One of these items is approved data. Thank you.
No, that's not one of your favorite kind of contracts.
No, it's not.
So I'm happy to provide some clarity on that. Actually, all the service.
We just approved COVID at the liquor stores today for kids. Not the same, because the liquor store is part of us, and they're holding them and reselling them. You're not going to be holding those toolkits. Somebody's going to be holding them somewhere else.
So we do own the toolkits. If it were important to the council that we actually warehouse those toolkits and then give them to the vendor to ship to classrooms, which would be an additional administrative burden for the agency that would not add significant value to the training provided. That is something that we could certainly move forward with, but it is a benefit to the agency to not have to warehouse the toolkit.
I don't want to make it difficult on the agency, but it's still prepaying for the kids.
Just a question. So we're paying, advancing $180 per kit, $180,000 for 1,000 kits, but then we're paying $239 per kit. Is that right?
We are only advancing the manufacturer cost of the kit.
Okay. So the company, well, I guess this is their kit, so this is their profit.
Yes.
$59 per kit is their profit.
It's designed by the vendor who is a New Hampshire-based longtime school counselor.
My question was really just why, the explanation for why this needed to be sole source. It just didn't feel like it was very well explained here. I wonder if you could elaborate on why this needs to be sole source.
I'm happy to provide additional context. So we've articulated the need for this type of training. Here This Now in the regulated classroom is training that dozens of school districts have utilized to pre-train, where the vendor has already trained thousands of teachers within the state of New Hampshire. Based on the feedback that the department has received and the evidence base of this model, we want to provide that opportunity to educators in classrooms statewide. And also, we have been prioritizing utilizing our RFESR funds and all of our COVID emergency relief funds to support New Hampshire-based businesses and this New Hampshire small business.
Thank you. We just talked this morning about the contracting process and how it would really be helpful if the departments would explain when they do the sole source contract, provide the counselors further explanation. That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you for the feedback.
Further discussion on any of these, Councilor?
On the same contract, so basically if they walk and we have these kids, we get a kits, is that my understanding?
Yes, the state would own the kits, but we would like to disseminate those to classrooms so that they could be made of use.
Is it possible, I know I asked the commissioner to use bring in a kit.
Do you have a kit? Do you want me to grab it?
Absolutely, I want to see what the kit looks like. Is it worth what we are being told it's worth?
I'm just trying to be consistent with the other departments because.
So that's
what it's
So
been.
that's a bit, do you want me to open it? Sure.
There's no lunch in there.
That's a running monster lunch.
So there are instructions within the kit. There are these booklets that explains the different manipulatives that are included. There are 2 weighted items. So it's a weighted scarf to help students self-regulate and calm down. A weighted hand manipulative that helps students and teachers alike self-regulate. There's room to pull everything out.
Sure.
There are essential oils, a roller ball, again to calm. And I will show you. These are all different manipulatives that are. So you have like a squish ball, push ball, things that you would be familiar with. And because of the sedentary nature of many of our classrooms, teacher in the front, kids lined up in rows receiving instruction, many students are not getting movement. So these are all things to help students have movement in a classroom appropriate way that are evidence-based, many of which are first in class or only in class in the market.
Yeah, I think also it's important to note that the teachers then will have the education and the tools and skill set to help kids be regulated.
So my follow-up question is,
Well, there's the T, there's a couple comments.
Yeah.
The council is on. So that's kind of, yeah.
so another entity or vendor could step in and provide a service and just come back away and just let them do the product.
That's
In other words, it's tangible value.
That's correct. And also, because this is a train-the-trainer model, we're seeking to train 600 educators who can disseminate the training within their schools, within their school districts. So we're building the capacity within the state so that we are not reliant upon vendor.
I think it's brilliant. Here we've had these youth behavioral problems the last 2 years that have gone up 5 times, and we're building behavioral capacity, whether it's Epping or Hampstead, and some of our solutions are right in the classroom. I think it's a great idea.
How about recess? We're looking to get kids to do something. What about recess?
The importance of recess is certainly evidence-based, but that is not something necessarily relevant to a specific contract or something that we can dictate
Well,
the schools.
we're going to have to take the time to take those squishy balls and pass them around to the kids. And the kids could go outside to recess for the same whatever amount of time it takes.
Can we pass a bill, configuring bill that mandates a certain amount of play outside of it?
With the instructional time.
Yeah, the
Yes,
instructional
so
time.
make sure that the kids get enough recess time, which is instructional time.
Yeah, I think we passed something a few years ago that really, I don't remember the
I don't know,
details.
Governor, I can tell you that in the Manchester School District, I had big fights about that.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Getting kids out twice a day, like they should be.
I think that was part of the impetus for the bill that came, I think in 18 or something.
So not each kid gets their kid. It's just a certain allotment for each school, for each teacher that's been trained on this instruction. But
So the kits are classroom-based. They'll be provided to those trainers who are trained, and the educators who also take the asynchronous training to utilize in their classroom. And the training discusses the science behind these different tools.
What age group is this for?
That's a great question. So I think a lot of people look at things like squish balls and think that they are likely geared toward an elementary audience, but this was actually developed in a New Hampshire high school setting based on what was working for high school students. So it should work for all age grades, all ages and all grades.
Thank you.
Ms. Warren?
And so instead of this contractor going to the bank and getting a $180,000 loan, now we'll have a city contract, we are fronting the money, and then he's going to basically pay us back for that money by when we charge like the 239, it will be reduced by the 180 for each of those kits.
So we are purchasing the items, and then in addition, the difference between the manufacturer's cost and the vendor's cost is what can be billed after we purchase the items.
Who gets the drink for tea? No, well, there's only two of them.
There's only 2 councils in
No.
Probably for the teacher and the teacher's aide here.
And we're happy to leave this.
And so the obvious next question is, how do you resupply it? How do you resupply the kits? When you use them up?
If there is demand beyond that which we are entering into a contract for, you'll notice that this is through 2023 because this is emergency training and emergency materials that the classroom needs now. If there's demand that exceeds our contract, then we will hope to expand in those times, so extending it through 2024, and resources committed to providing these trainings and resources to classrooms.
So is this geared really towards the COVID environment last year, or is this geared towards something else going on in the school system, or is this just a new program that we're coming from?
So dysregulation is always present in classrooms to a degree. The degree to which we have seen increases in dysregulation related to the return to in-person instruction and students being out of the classroom for a year plus is much higher.
Makes sense. Thanks.
I love the term dysregulation, by the way. You sent a bunch of those to Washington. I think they should all dysregulate. They're using dysregulation. That's great. And thank you for the foresight to bring it in and being able to show some.
We did that and send out to Washington, meanwhile we'll come back up and actually do it.
We're going to do it anyway, or whatever. Further discussion on any of that can do. Okay, all in favor of items 93 through 98, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Just to be consistent, no on 98.
No on 96.
No on 96, no on 98, the items do pass. Thank you very much. I'm going to now ask for motion to adopt agenda items 99, 100, and 101 from the Department of Safety.
So moved.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The item is approved. I'll now ask for a motion to adopt agenda item 102 through 108 from the Department of Justice.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those items are approved. I'll now ask for a motion to adopt agenda items 109 through 112 from the Department of Administrative Services.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Warner.
On 112, I just want to say that I know that when this facility was first proposed, it was a very different scope, different location of the facility, and I know there was quite a hue and cry from the local community about this facility as proposed, and I just want to say that I've been in touch with the officials. We are very happy with the communication that has been going on between the state and the city about this facility, and if there needs to be this facility at that location, that they're very pleased about the communication, the outreach, and really listening to the community. So thank you.
I'm glad to hear that the person who's been doing the lion's share of the work on that is Ted Copper, who's our development person, who's standing right there, and that's why I'm standing up in case they want to bombard him.
When do we think it will be open?
Oh, geez, that's all open 2023.
Councilor Stevens.
Ralph, we had a discussion about the selection of SMRT. I'm familiar with their work. It's just a great choice. Well done.
Thank you, I appreciate that. It's a very important part of the project for Health and Human Services and New Hampshire Hospital and DPW as well. The community has to be involved for it to be a successful project.
Okay.
Further discussion on any of these items? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All the items from admin services are approved. We still have some tabled items, items 34A and 34B, that were previously tabled from the Office of the Governor. Is there an interest in removing those items from the table? We have a motion to remove them from the table. Is there a second? Yes.
34A.
So we have this CDA motion. Thank you. We have a motion to remove them from the table. Is there a second?
34A.
Oh, I'm sorry. So a second to remove from the table?
34A? Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to remove them from the table. All in favor of removing them from the table, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The items are not removed from the table.
Governor, you're the one answering questions on these items. We have an off-agenda question about these items.
Sure. I guess we can do that.
So in a February 26th order, 2021 from the PRLB, they found that the state had committed unfair labor practices by failing to submit their fact finder's report to the Executive Council, and when that was reviewed by the reviewer, they made a statement about the importance of these agreements coming before the Executive Council, and that the legislature actually considered this as, part of the process that would assist the parties in reaching agreement. The statute does call for the council to accept or reject these recommendations, and I think in fairness to the state employees that we should do this. We should bring them forward. We should vote them up or down. And specifically, the PRLB said the Executive Council has no authority to either negotiate or ratify collective bargaining agreements and normally plays no role in the bargaining process. However, the legislature nevertheless chose to involve the Executive Council in the event a fact finder's recommendation is rejected by either party. The legislature's decision to provide for the inclusion of the Executive Council is consistent with one of the purposes of A12, which is to broaden participation in impasse negotiations and to make these parties vulnerable to publicity that will no doubt attend an impasse. So I think that we are serving the purpose of the statute by bringing these forward, by voting on them. I don't think it's fair to the state employees that this be postponed and that there be an indefinite delay while we await a Supreme Court decision. I know you brought them forward. I know you asked the council not to table them, and I would urge the fellow councilors to take these off the table and vote them up or down.
So if I may, just for clarification, approval of these contracts does not mean the contract. This is just the advice of the council. So it's an opinion. That's all. It doesn't mean that it absolutely happens. I kind of take that information in the discussion, and then we decide how to move forward. Yeah, that's it. But it's still sitting on the table. So you guys want to pick up the table at some point?
So I'd like to take number 35 off the table, don't I?
Oh, okay. Great. So there's a motion to take item 35 from the table. We have a second on that. All in favor of removing item 35 from the table, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 35 is now removed from the table. Can I get a motion to adopt item 35 from the CDFA? So moved. So motion and second. Any discussion on formally table item 35?
I talked to the director of the CDFA and got a good answer to my questions, so I'm fine.
Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of formally table item 35, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 35 from the CDFA is passed. Do we have information from is Chase or Taylor here to help maybe clarify? So if I may, I'll first ask for so we can have a discussion. I'll ask for a motion to remove items 67 and 73 from the table.
Second.
Motion and second. Any, all in favor of removing 67 and 73 from the table, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, those items are currently removed from the table. Can I get a motion to adopt agenda items 67 and 73?
So moved. Second.
Motion and second. Discussion.
Governor, if I may, I have a handout that's actually more than just a summary of the plan. It's the actual plan itself and then term sheets relative to the eligibility and requirements of it. I believe these have all also been emailed to you or in the process of being emailed to you. And let's just jump right in. To address some of the questions leading up to this relative to the rental assistance program, Councilors Wheeler and Kenny, the threshold for assistance under the rental assistance program is 80% of AMI. There is no cap on the rent amount in that program, but it has to be reasonable, and there are red flags within the system to identify fraud.
So if you make the, I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, area median income. So your household income has to be at 80% of area median income or less in order to be in that program.
How do you find out what AMI in your area is?
It's a Census Bureau statistic.
And is that done by town or state by state?
It's like regions of the state. It depends on the part of the state. So for instance, I think for a household of four, the fortunate 80% of AMI is like $60,000 or $70,000.
And as long as you meet that threshold, you qualify, and it doesn't matter how much you qualify for. Your rent can be $10,000, you qualify.
If your rent is $10,000, it may be a red flag for fraud, and you probably have to have your application investigated further.
And those are consistently used throughout all the housing programs.
And I believe that number is also required by the statute. One theme I think you'll note with the ERA program and the Housing Assistance Fund is that we're trying to be as flexible as we can within federal requirements. Councilor Kenny, to your question about whether a landlord could try and get the lost value of rent for someone they're trying to evict, the answer is no. The award that would be given for lost rent or rent arrears is what's contractually obligated or the actually paid amount. So if they had someone who was providing rent via a voucher, but the landlord could have received more funds at a market rate, they can't apply for the difference of the two even if they're trying to evict that particular.
Well, they're not trying to, they haven't evicted, so what is the difference?
Well, even in that case, they couldn't go back for the lost value of rent. It would have to be for the amount that was supposed to have been paid under it. So they would have to have not been paying what they are obligated to pay.
Well, one would be paying the landlords. Okay.
And on the Homeowners Assistance Fund, what I gave you, the first couple pages is the executive summary, then the heart of the plan itself, and then term pages relative to each aspect of the plan. And just as a reminder, all of this will be coming to you again when the $45 million for the program actually arrives at the state and we go to fiscal and GNC for approval of using the funds for this particular plan. There are 4 primary categories within the plan in terms of what it would accomplish: mortgage reinstatement, past due property taxes, insurance and association dues, utility and internet payment assistance, and housing counseling and legal aid. The overall eligibility depends a little bit on which aspect of the plan someone is applying for, but generally speaking, eligibility is determined by 125% of AMI. Again, that's a statutory figure, not one that we just sort of created out of thin air. And they have to have experienced the harm that they're applying for, I believe, as of January 1st, 2020.
2020?
Yes. So it goes back to the beginning, roughly the beginning of the pandemic, not 2021.
Goes back pre-pandemic.
Oh.
You go way back.
So what's 125% of AMI for the same example as the rental? Maybe 80 from the math one.
25% of 80,000?
Well,
no, shoot, so 40% more, roughly. That'd be close to 100 grand, I guess.
Or a little over
In that,
70.
right, in that particular area, other parts of the state that would have a different AMI.
Well, I'm mostly concerned about the mortgage assistance part. This is what the question was. So, may I go?
Please, no.
Yeah, so a household making $100,000 can get $20,000 worth of assistance?
Yes, if they meet the other eligibility requirements in the program, which means they're in basically arrears on their mortgage payments and are otherwise eligible. There's also, as I mentioned, some thresholds they have to do before they apply for the fund. There's mitigation efforts and steps that they have to engage with, I think, with their lender before they come and apply for this plan. So they have to demonstrate that not only have they not paid it, they've tried to work it out with their lender before coming and asking for the funds.
So, for the question, so if you own $1 million house or $750,000 house, you can still get this $20,000 a year to pay the bills?
I mean, it would be impressive, I think, if you owed that large and expensive a house, if you only made just over 100% of AMI, but technically, yes, that would be true.
It's certainly possible if you inherited this part of it, or, any of that. So you could own $1 million house and get $20,000 to make your payments. You wouldn't be forced to downsize.
Only looking back in the past, and they have to demonstrate that they can afford it moving forward. So there's a whole review process and application process. I'm really truncating it down just to give you the short snippets. But again, the full plan is here, along with the term sheets for each aspect of the plan, and we're happy to go even more into detail when we bring the full item before you for approval.
So, and this, I'm sorry I didn't catch it. Would this be for multiple years? Ultimately, it would be 20 and 21?
It'd be a one-time payment to an applicant up to $20,000. So it's a grant. So if they come forward and apply and say, I've got $15,000 of mortgage payments I owe as of January 1st because of COVID, barring they meet all the other eligibility requirements, then they would get a payment to help bring them up to arrears. And again, they have to demonstrate other things, such as being able to continue to pay it. If they don't, then there's counseling and mitigation efforts that they would also then be enrolled in order to help ensure that the funds are being used effectively and longer term actually helping those who are applying for them.
So this could be a mix of them paying some and the 20,000 pays. Is that
Yes,
correct?
yes. Okay. So if, for instance, they owed $25,000, they wouldn't get more than $20,000.
So this would actually build equity for the person, and there's no lien on the property, and we're going to give them money to build equity, and we don't get any of it back. We're just giving it away.
To my knowledge, this program wouldn't have a lien on the property, but certainly if they owe a mortgage on it, the bank could always repossess the home if they did not make the mortgage payments.
I was talking about the government getting their money back. That has nothing to do with that.
No, the government getting none of it.
Right.
Okay. All right.
And again, just to go back to the original item, this is just for the administrative costs to finish the plan. Sorry. Fantastic.
Further discussion on either of these items? Councilwoman?
And this program is really designed to address the fact that during COVID, people have suffered income losses. We could be facing a significant number of foreclosures as a result of that, and this is a one-time program to address a need that has arisen as a result of COVID.
That's correct.
Yeah, well, let's just to be fair, do you have data on foreclosures? I believe we're at an all-time low of foreclosures.
I believe NIFA does have data on it, and there is question as to how much of the fund will end up being used based on what need actually exists.
I'm just looking at New Hampshire, I don't know the national number,
Yeah.
but I can tell you New Hampshire is unprecedented, and that we have an unprecedented low amount of foreclosures actually.
On an emergency rental assistance fund, we know we have to keep people out of circuit court with the backlog, so this is a great program to keep people in their homes. We can't afford the backlog. And I know Judge King is working very hard on getting the word out.
Is there any other asset test with this money? Can you have $100,000 in the bank and still get this 20? And you just didn't pay more?
I would have to verify that. I think it's based off income, not total assets, because I believe that equity in the home would be counted as an asset as well, if that was the case.
Other assets, like liquid, like cash.
If it is there, it would be in the term sheet that I've provided. If you'd like, I can take a second to look and see if that's the case.
Yeah, I just still, excuse me, I'm just still perplexed. You're bringing me an item like this, and you don't know what you're bringing. It makes it very hard to make a decision when you can't even tell me if there's an asset test.
I understand.
It makes it impossible to vote on.
But just to restate, all we're voting on today is to set up the administrative structure of a program, and if we don't like the program, we can reject it later.
Correct.
Right?
And throw away $1.25 million setting up something you don't use. Step
Perhaps
backwards.
Would we be able to use these funds in any other way?
No, specifically Homeowners Assistance Fund program. This isn't part of the ARPA State Fiscal Recovery Funds. This is a separate federal program. So if we reject the funds, they don't need to go somewhere else. They have to be specifically used for this plan. That would have to be approved by the federal government. And Counselor, I don't very quickly see an additional asset test in the eligibility, but there is a qualified hardship test that they have to abide by, which I have to get additional information on what the elements of that would be. And just as a reminder, we're not voting on the entire plan.
Okay. All in favor of items 67 and 73, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Both of the items are approved. Okay, I think that concludes our regular agenda. Thank you guys very much. We'll leave the Office of the Governor item on the table. And that will conclude the meeting. Thank you.